Roll, please.
Belter.
Here.
Birmingham. Hintz. Hintz.
Here. Maybe.
Les.
Here.
Schneider.
Gasp.
We gotta behave.
Stan.
Here.
Tower.
Here.
Yeah, just because this is your last meeting, you don't.
Order.
Here, but never again.
Okay, on the consent agenda, we have minutes from our January 21st meeting, which are here for your movement and approval. I'll accept a motion or changes.
Move for approval. Second.
A motion is second. Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. New business, discussion on Marion Road water tower replacement. Begins now.
Just as an introduction, the RDA heard the first thoughts about a potential location of the water tower at their January meeting. Since then, Public Works has been working on developing the specifics of the location for a water tower and has been working with the stakeholder group, and I believe you should have received the copies of the information they've provided the stakeholder group, just to give you a sense of what they've been working on for location, design, things of that nature. And it's getting closer to the final decision that the city needs to make regarding that location, and we wanted to have Mr. Patek and some of his staff available to give the RDA an update as to where things are headed and what kind of action we might need from the RDA at an April meeting. And if Mr. Patek could.
Mind if we all come up to the table?
Oh, sure.
Do.
Given what everybody's been talking to me about, no, I don't think anybody wants to
Sure.
at the table, so I'll just be here.
Well, maybe let's have some. We hand out that one, I'll hand out this one. Okay, so we handed out a site plan at the, last meeting. It's been modified a little bit.
Thank you, David.
Sure. Okay, so
Mr. Patek, could you do
sure,
introductions real
that's what I
quick?
thought I'd start off with. At the last meeting, Steve Brandon is the Utilities Superintendent for Department of Public Works. We asked Chief Franz to come. City Manager's here also. Assistant Director of Public Works Steve Godey's here. And Linda Moore, our consultant with CH2M Hill, is also here to participate in some discussion. I'm not sure who said, or maybe if that's what you said, Alan, we tried to put together the two packets of all the information that were talked about at the, or reviewed with the stakeholder committee, and then now we have a couple handouts that we just gave you. One of them being an aerial showing the existing water tower site versus the idea of having part of Lot 4, which is shown in green there. And you can see that part of Lot 4 in relation to the rest of the development in that area. And then the other handout is a modification to the site plan we handed out at the last meeting, where we've made it a little larger. It's a couple thousand square feet bigger, but it's still approximately, it's a little larger than 1/3 of an acre. You can see there where on the, in red it indicates the area of 15,825 square feet. What happened with this diagram, it shows in purple, there's a circle that's drawn with a 15-foot setback for maintenance purposes, and that's how we located the tower on the portion of the lot where we would propose for the new tower. If you have any questions about the minutes, we could go through those, or the packets from the stakeholder committee. We had a lot of information there. I hope you had an opportunity to look at it. We have the different attachments. So, for instance, from the February meeting, we have the exhibit that was put together that shows the different types of towers. The spheroid, the multi-leg, the fluted column, and the composite. And then with the minutes from the March 5th, you can see that here sure what that was, but okay. So on page 4, we had the stakeholder committee do some rating, and if you look at that graph, you can see that the stakeholder committee is really, I'd say probably even scoring of or rating or preference for for either composite or spheroid. But then the water tower features section, because we had a lot of discussion of how to enhance the site, so you can see the different things we talked about as far as site landscaping, decorative fence, a decorative equipment building for the cell phone companies that are located at the structure, and also concealment of the antennas that the cell phone companies use, and some other attachments near the back of the March 5th give examples. So, for instance, there's a kind of a I guess collage of examples of so one's called existing area structures and fence. So the idea is the type of building we would build for the cell phone equipment, or the type of fence. The intent is to match the different structures that are being built. So, for instance, this one picture right here is the fence we built at the central garage. Another attachment, which you might find interesting, is this 3-page attachment showing the different examples, kind of a Photoshop of the old tower and what a new tower with the decorative fence, showing you some scale or examples of things that the stakeholder committee talked about. So, for instance, the one example is a composite tower with clocks on it. Another example is a composite. Actually, there are, Linda found composite towers in, I'm going to get it, one was in Indiana and one was in Minnesota or something.
The clock tower example was from Minnesota.
Okay.
And the one with the windows or the panels or the painted on panels that look like windows, they're in Indiana and in Texas.
Okay. So, we had a lot of discussion at the stakeholder committee, and I guess we're trying to give you a flavor of the type of discussion we had with that committee. And I guess we'd entertain any questions you have about the process of building a new water tower.
How much taller is this than the existing one?
This would be proposed to be the same height, 175 feet tall. We're not changing the height. And we're not changing the size. It's 750,000 gallons.
Gallons, right.
And so we're putting the same size tower in. I think there was one question came up at the stakeholder committee as far as just eliminating the tower. And we did, Linda's group did some analysis of, and I believe that's in your minutes actually, on the March 5th minutes. You know, there was the analysis on page 2 showing that if we don't have the tower, we have an additional 15, almost 16 million in water main improvements, and then we have to put additional storage out on 9th and Washburn, because that we need the 750,000 gallons in storage, and to eliminate it would require it be replaced somewhere else. So we would need a new tower there. So to eliminate the tower completely would need an extra over $20 million worth of expenses to make up for eliminate it. So that didn't seem like a viable option. We also, on that same page, actually page 2, and it continues on to page 3, there was a discussion about relocating the tower out to the area of the cemetery. Now, we had I don't remember if we talked about the study that was done in 2013, 2014, but there were locations that were proposed for possible relocation of the tower, and we also did an analysis that, you know, we can move the tower out near the cemetery, and that costs an additional $8 to almost $9 million in main improvements again, and that's not including building the new tower for $4 million. So the stakeholder group had a lot of questions. If you've had time to look through the minutes and the PowerPoint presentations, if not, I would suggest you do, because there's a lot of information there. We were trying to review all the different issues that the stakeholder committee had.
Anyway, first I want to say I really appreciate the process that you've gone through, and particularly asking, you know, all of the broader questions there.
Well, we can, and I'll just interrupt. I think we had a good group. Our group has a lot of questions, and I think that was helpful to the process. So I think that worked out.
I mean, my own feeling, when I first look at the numbers about moving, and also, you know, the consideration of this site, I don't have any problem with keeping it in the proposed site there. I think that the aesthetics of the tower, you know, if they're properly addressed, that will not create any particular hardships for the development of the rest of the properties there.
Okay.
Is there any data where these towers have been installed in other communities to indicate that there's a reduction in property value because of this? And in this case, being a redevelopment area with a nice area for potential to come, is there a potential of making up that $8.6 million in tax increment with that difference?
In this site, I don't think so. I mean, Mr. Davis can address that, but
I don't know of any studies that exist regarding the economic impact of a water tower on a redevelopment site. My expectation is if we're talking $9 million, that would basically have to double the value of the TIF that we'd ever get, and I just don't see doubling the value whether there's a tower there or not, based on the impact of having a tower there.
I think the disappointment, though, if you weigh in on costs and the math involved, as a city, we've invested, and a state, we've invested $32 million in our Marion Road project. That's truly the most expensive 16,000 square feet of real estate in the city of Oshkosh that you've chosen. Whether it's just propinquity, it's nearby, whether it's convenience, you didn't need to negotiate with any neighbors, that's fine. But we don't have any more expensive land in the city, but the Pioneer Island would be a cheaper location than this when you look at how much money we've invested in Marion Road. So I'm not exactly sure. I looked at your alternate location studies. I don't know if you traced all the way back to the water main to the lake along Merritt Street, looked at some of the blighted properties along Broad Street that could possibly be replaced. 16,000 square feet is only two blighted properties that we could eliminate and put a water tower in a different location and help out a blighted neighborhood and still preserve our Marion Road site.
Actually, I
saw this map. I saw this online.
the water main map.
Do you want this one distributed too?
No, that
That was online.
talk
That's
about the,
Okay.
short on maps, but what I think your question would be, and let me explain the map. All the different colors indicate different size mains. So the red are our largest mains. It's in the area of City Hall, it's a 20-inch, but when it starts out at the water filtration plant, it's a 24-inch.
right.
And so I put 2 asterisks on this map to show possible locations where just by trying to look at areas that were more either multifamily or zoned commercial, and if you're familiar with the plans from the Department of Community Development, they have historic districts in this area, and so I didn't think it was would be considered a good planning effort to take property in the Church Irving Historic District and convert it into a utility structure. So that's why I specifically picked these 2 areas. I didn't go east of Main Street with the idea that, right now our current location is in a commercial area, commercial high-density residential area. I wasn't going to go east of Main Street on the red line because that is low-density residential, historic in many cases. And then if you go on the city website for historic districts, this 20-inch water main coming down Merritt and then going up Church goes through the Main Street Historic District, and then it goes right adjoining the Irving Church Historic District. So I specifically tried to minimize the impact to those 2 districts. So these 2 locations that I'm showing are just east of City Hall. There's 6 commercial properties right on Church Avenue, right across from the Presbyterian and the Baptist Church right there in that area. And a high-density residential area on Wisconsin Street right across from the old Lincoln School. So just looking at those 2 areas, I came up with, I think, approximately 6 properties needing to be purchased at each location, and to try to come up with the 1 acre, a 1 acre parcel. And right next to City Hall, just using the fair market value, I come up with $856,000 in fair market value for those 6 properties. And on Wisconsin, I came up with just under an acre. It's .91 acres and $919,000 fair market value. That does not include all the costs to demolish, relocate businesses, and all those other expenses. I don't have those. I just was trying to come up with a value of just property value as a comparison. But, those are 2 possible locations. We would not recommend them. We currently have a site where we can just rebuild our water tower. Now, we've talked to the stakeholder committee, and we tried to indicate that, the discussions with the RDA are to provide the opportunity for the water utility to minimize the risk to the community, because if we take down the old tower to build the new tower, we will be -1 tower for a year. So the community, that's additional risk as far as we can see, and in our mind, it made sense to approach the RDA about this 1/3 of an acre that's adjoining our property. And the secondary benefit is allowing us to go on the RDA property allows us to deal with Lamico where they need to figure out how to redevelop their property in the future. So our thought is that, we have a site, we can stay on our site, there's risk. Community just needs to understand that there's additional risk if we don't go to the RDA property, and there's the additional benefit of being able to work with Lamico. So we saw it as a win-win for the area. We understand that the water tower doesn't look good right now, but I think Linda has, if you look at the handouts, you can see that there are ways to make a water tower fit into this area. And so I think the question about decrease in property values is, I don't see that as something that's a reality.
Well, as an RDA, our responsibility is to promote redevelopment and eliminate blight. So the design discussion is great, and it is, you've spent a lot of work on that, so I applaud you on that. From my eliminate blight and redevelopment charge, why can't we work out something with Lamico? I know they're amenable to a trade. They'd be happy to move it onto Lamico property and merge the old water tower site into their property. There's 2 or 3 projects that are in play right now on the Lamico property, and I know they're amenable to something like that.
And they actually made a proposal to us to sell or to trade property that has frontage on Marion Road. And my response to them was, it's not appropriate for the tower to have the Marion Road frontage. Our current site is back off of Marion Road.
But it's we have $4 million worth of projects and another $15 million worth of projects that'll be next to the new tower. Why is it any worse for the tower to be closer to Marion Road than to be closer to Jackson Street?
I can, from a planning perspective, maybe Mr. Davis can talk about it, but I think that it's just, if you have public road frontage, it would seem to make sense that you build development on that road frontage, that you don't put a utility structure and use up all your frontage. But our response was that to Lamico, that we would be interested in working out something with them in the future as far as the back side of their lot, but not the frontage on Marion Road. But understand that right now we're coming to you because we don't have the space to build on our lot without ripping down the tower. Right. And to minimize that risk, we're trying to get more area down here so that in 75 years, somebody's not sitting around the same table going, if we stay where we are, the same question about risk will come up the next time the tower needs to be ripped down.
I would really like the details on that Lamico discussion, because one of our main stigmas on the Marion Road project is Lamico right in the middle of our project that's causing some people to not be as attracted to it.
Is there a microphone? Okay. I don't know if this is working. All right. Actually, it's probably, I appreciate Darlene bringing up this aerial. This is very good. So, because really right now, we're this square right here, and they are, the Lamico development surrounds us with that U. So the request from Lamico was that we take this old building here and rip it down at the utility costs and put the tower there. And we didn't think that was in the best interest of the utility because, like I said, from a development perspective, it seemed like a public road should be where development is occurring. We're not a development. We're a utility structure. So it didn't make sense for us to sit here. It makes sense for us to figure out this funny leg here where we could square something up on our parcel so that they then have maybe take some of this land and have a better redevelopment area off of Marion Road for whatever they're going to do with their property, understanding that, of course, the road system out here is not complete, and it has to be determined how these roads, either Riverway or Dawes or a future possible east-west road, is developed in the area. I know that, at least talking with Mr. Davis, that the idea is that Riverway does not need to come through, but because right now there's a private driveway that is a connection down to Marion Road through the existing lots right here. But really there needs to be some discussion about other roads in this area in the context of what's going to happen with land.
But if I could eliminate a blighted building and move the water tower where that blighted building was, don't I accomplish two things at once?
I think that's short-term planning. I think you want something on the frontage to promote your development. You don't want our water tower to be promoting your development.
Well, we don't own that, so it would go on some property we don't own. We'd eliminate a building. We'd still have the property that we do own for development.
But I don't want to put words in Mr. Davis's mouth, but long term, I think he sees this as an area that needs to be redeveloped and will be redeveloped to match into the rest of the.
But it's just like it's like 50 feet away from where it is right now.
And I think
It just doesn't make sense until we know what that cost would be, until we know what those details would be. I don't want to use up our Marion Road project if I don't have to.
some costs I am aware of is that if the city utility was going to purchase the Lamico building for the site and then tear it down, just based on the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've spent on the RDA to remove buildings and landfill them, or asbestos or remediation that gets involved, there's going to be not just straight land costs, there'll be potentially much higher costs to take that building down, which...
Well, if I could interrupt, there's a trade proposed, and they have two demo estimates for, one's about 150,000, one's like 230,000. So it looks like the cost of our land, when you factor in what we paid for that lot, you're probably looking at about $230,000 to $40,000 worth of RDA reimbursement to reimburse us for the cost of the parcel you're looking at.
Well, I understood that the parcel that the utility would buy would be at approximately $5 a square foot.
Well, we paid $1.3 million for 92,000 square feet, so we have about $13.50 per square foot in that property. So I assume you'd reimburse us for our cost.
I think the $5
That's
is
sort
based
of a
on what?
meaningless number.
So we paid for it.
Of moving ahead forward. I mean,
Right.
we obviously aren't, you know, I mean, only if the utility buys it would they pay that kind of money. I mean, we don't have any developers who are going to pay us that kind of money, especially for a lot that is kind of a weird pie shape.
No, but then we get tax revenue from whatever does go there for the rest of our lives versus zero tax revenue.
It's going to be a smaller, you know, I'm not, you know, I would think that anybody who's going in there is going to be looking at the front part of the lot, not the
Right.
narrow
Of
part
course.
of the triangle in the back there.
I can tell you that my job is to separate personal preference from the activities that are for the benefit of the city, and I want to thank the city staff for doing a lot of diligence and homework in this area. My personal preference would be for this to go into the area by the university off of Wisconsin. I think there's maybe a potential branding opportunity for the university to do a very nice thing there, and it's kind of an entry point for the university. Saying that, you've done your diligence, you've done your homework. You're not recommending that site. You're recommending the site that you're proposing. And I'm not an expert in any of the fields that you've brought to the table. And so I've got to listen to what the experts are telling us. And if there isn't an impact, if there isn't a perceived impact in economics of other development that can come into this area, then I can't say that I have a problem with it. Do I like water towers in this area? No, I mean, I don't personally. But if there isn't a negative economic impact to the city, I can't say that I wouldn't be for it. So.
Dave, just a broader question and come back in to ask outside. What are the locational constraints for the water tower? In other words, does it have to be on the north side of the river? How far east could it go? How far west could it go? And with reference, does it have to be on a certain kind of main? What are the key characteristics of the locational constraints?
And maybe Linda or Steve
Yeah.
can jump in, but I think that's the key thing, is what the connection to the rest of the water main system.
So it sort of has to be near a red? I'm just
Right.
trying to look at the map too. And
That's correct.
But it's blue on the map that where we're locating it.
Pardon me?
It's blue on the map where we're locating it. So you're not
Oh.
locating on a red.
We're, right now, we're connected with a system of greens, which are 12-inch, and the purple, which is a 16-inch.
Okay.
But that connects all back, that, as part of the Pearl Avenue reconstruction, you know, we installed those water mains to have that correct connection to the current tower. As opposed to we know that with that system that's out there at the current location, that the tower works. To minimize the water main improvements that I was talking about for other locations, we tried to pick locations, or I looked at specifically ones that were near the 20-inch. So as a different example, I think the question came to Mr. Davis about putting a water tower right next to the downtown fire station. And we also, if you look at the map, you can see that there's some the green 12-inch size on Court. There's some 12-inch on Otter Avenue, but all of those mains only connect to the purple, which is the 16. They don't connect to the 20.
Okay.
So then, based on Linda's analysis, we're looking at a minimum almost $1.5 million to $2 million to loop water mains back to Washington Avenue, and then another $2 to $4 million worth of improvements in neighboring streets. So I think, Mayor, as far as your question is what were we looking at? To make it simple, I tried to look for an area that would be near the red line, which is the biggest water main we have, which would then make for the easiest operation for a new tower.
Dave, are you talking the university? I mean, my
No.
God, there's a lot of land
Right.
close to the red line that doesn't have any buildings on it on the university property.
We did not, because the university has, if you look at some of these areas, they have many of their own plans, and we as a municipality cannot take land from a higher authority like a state. We can condemn private property, and the state can take land from the city, but we cannot.
But you might want to talk to them about it and see what kind of a nice deal could be worked out.
We have not done that. I can tell you that looking at their master plan, I don't see an area that's available next to the red line on their master plan. So that,
You've identified an area pretty darn close, and
it's across the street, but it's all private property that we would be able to go out and condemn.
How about by the tech school? Looks like the red line goes over by the city garage, tech school.
You know, I guess I'm a little confused on the idea of the impact of the tower as far as,
further down the river.
well, if we're trying to make the river another gateway, if you actually, a really good thing for you to do as a comparison is to come down Oregon Street and look at the tower as it exists right now behind the new apartment building that's being built on the north side of the river. And it's one of those situations where I happened to be driving down Oregon Street, stopped at the stop and go light, looked at it in context, and it actually was blocking the new apartment building. As you came down the street, was blocking at least half of the water tower. So, if the idea is that from a planning perspective, you want the river to be a gateway, and the large buildings in a multifamily or a commercial area would help block it, wouldn't that make sense that the current location would be a better location visibility-wise? Otherwise, people are, that's what you want people to look at when they're going up and down the river. I'm not sure. I guess I'm a little confused as what from a planning perspective we're trying to accomplish.
Well, we're trying to, our fiduciary responsibility is to maximize the tax assessed value that we create out of the Marion Road project. We promised the city of Oshkosh that we would create $32 million worth of tax assessed value and pay back $6 million worth of lease revenue bonds. So any of that land that doesn't go to a productive tax-paying purpose is kind of not what we're allowed to do. I mean, certainly I'm not going to block this, but it just seems like an odd use for what we've invested the money into, and it's not what we told the city we were going to do, and we did this in 2004, so I just don't feel right about that. So we're looking for close alternatives. The Lamico, to me, the Lamico site, if I can eliminate that blight, still have it within 50 feet of where it is on your map, I've got a win-win for not that much money relative to what we've been spending on blighted commercial properties lately.
I like your point, Tom, but I think there's also the point that the grandiose dreams we had for this site really hadn't been met.
They're different. But I don't want to give up on it yet. Just the way I am.
What are we looking at here in terms of time frames and decision-making by the RDA and
Okay,
and that? 'Cause
good question.
At some point, there's going to have to be a decision. Right now, you're providing information, you're gathering information, you're narrowing down. But at some point, there's going to be a drop-dead date here.
Right.
People have to be prepared, and so figure out what other information they need, and then
That's
be
correct.
prepared to make a decision.
And so we had anticipated having either 2 or 3 stakeholder committee meetings. And so we had one in February, we had one in March, and the committee thought, based on all the information that had been provided, that there wasn't a need for a 3rd meeting. So we won't be scheduling another meeting of the stakeholders in April. But we wanted to come to the RDA with the information we had talked to with that group and say, what other questions do you have? And we'd anticipate that if you could have another meeting in April, that we would come back for some sort of action item in April, and then go to the council with a workshop to explain this, a presentation to them in May, and then we'd push ahead with the design so that we could get bid documents. So that's kind of the short schedule.
Okay. In terms of the RDA, you're looking for April kind of thing.
That's correct. End of April, so that by later in May, we could go to the council and get concurrence.
Okay, so I guess basically it's to see if we have more questions and then to do some thinking and a little scouting around during the next time, or if there's something we want to direct you to do.
So if I could ask one question, so is the thought that, as far as, I'm back on Lamico, that the water utility would, because I know the whole property is for sale, or I believe the whole property is for sale, so the water utility would buy the whole property?
No, they'd parcel out a matching, like, trade area. So they'd be happy to survey that up. I think they wanted to just draw a straight line north to south, and
Yeah, we did have a proposal from them. I'm just trying to understand what your thoughts were as far as what was all going to be demolished on the property, and
as little as possible, I mean, to minimize your costs, but it'd be that building to the east, the one that's dilapidated right now, so.
right.
Dave, I have a question, just, I'm not sure. Has that Lamico proposal been presented to the RDA?
No,
So
I just had a sidebar with it.
You're aware of it? So I thought you said you needed to see the details.
I would like to have some cost estimates on the demo and have somebody propose what size parcel to spin off, and actually have some details on what that option would be.
Okay, well, maybe it'd be appropriate to share it with the entire RDA. I mean, certainly want you to see everything, but we've taken a look at it. I also have a unique fiduciary responsibility, and for the utility to spend money unnecessarily for demoing a site, and I can't agree more with Dave about that corner site. Just seems, I agree with Mr. Lasky in terms of the location of that would be much better someplace else. No, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. The real issue is, from a fire standpoint, Chief's here for a reason. We need it for fire safety. So we're trying to make the best of the situation we're in. What we're hoping to do is try to make it as low profile as possible, and I think that's why Linda came in and provided some information to the group. When you get down to the ground, I think we can improve this site a lot. It's not the old, I call it the Petticoat Junction Water Tower. I think we can get rid of that view, because that does have a lot of negative connotations. And I would ask the RDA to trust Mr. Potek and his staff. Look at what they were able to accomplish with the central garage, which isn't even complete yet, but we took an area that was nothing short of ugly, and they've really tried to turn it into something positive. I think with ground effects, we can make this area much better. Where it goes in there, I'm certainly intrigued by the question that Mr. Hintz brought up about the university. All they can do is tell us no. And so I think I would like to follow up with that in terms of finding out. If they say no, that's all well and good. I know the university has some ambitious plans out there, and I think that's what Dave's referring to. But let's find out. Let's find out. But the Lamico, to be quite honest, to propose to put the water tower, move it up to the front of Marion Road, and Mr. Potek's idea was to give the ability of Lamico to square off at the corner so that that site could be redeveloped. That would increase the value for that whole area, because you have the entire corner. Tucking this in a corner of the Marion Road, tucking the tower in the corner of the Marion Road would be much more beneficial to the overall development of the site. Now, we can disagree on that, but I just don't think that us paying Lamico to demo their building at the ratepayers' I got to look at the ratepayers and go to the PSC and ask for a raise in rates when we build this water tower. It's going to be awfully hard for me to justify if we don't use the most efficient purchase possible. That's why the $8 million and those types of things, that's going to, PSC wouldn't be too thrilled about us proposing those types of things, wouldn't you? I mean, Steve, you don't normally get involved in those, but you've been doing enough PSC hearings over the years.
It's, yeah, no, they have to authorize the construction, and if it's not in the best interest of the ratepayers, they're not going to authorize construction.
So,
Not to interrupt.
we're keeping those in mind
Sure.
as we do that. So I think there's things we can look at. I appreciate the comments that everybody's made. I looked at Lamico, and I didn't think it was a good deal for the city from a planning standpoint or from a utility standpoint. The university, I didn't consider that, so I appreciate that comment. And there's one other one. I want to make sure, well, it's on the tape. I'll make sure I watch it. And we'll make sure that that gets taken care of.
I think it's good. Ask the university, I think they have some plans for most of that property at this point in time.
But we'll ask.
But you don't, if you don't ask, you don't know, but I suspect it.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that our best scenario from utility planning and future tower situation is that our intent was to keep the existing site for a tower rebuild in the future. Now, if we are able to build on the RDA portion, that site can move around within reason in the Lamico property to make that a best fit scenario for future development. So I just want to make sure that that was everybody's understanding. Would like to have as a best.
Well, thank you. And in all due respect, that Lamico issue, I talked to the owner representative. There are demo quotes that are much less than the cost of the land that the water utility is going to use to buy from the RDA. So really, it's a land trade. It's not a purchase price. And as long as the demo cost is less than the cost of the land from the RDA, it actually would save the utility ratepayers some money.
Is that similar to the information we received?
I'm not aware of.
We didn't get any of that information.
But I don't know your information on costing or pricing. I just did a cost per square foot of what we paid for the land, which comes up to about the 200.
The information of $5 was from Alan and Darlene.
Which is based on assessed values in the past. It had really nothing to do with purchase price, which has typically been about $1 for the private development, if you recall. So.
But I assume we paid that much for it, so that has to be assigned
Yes.
to the cost of the project. That's what we paid for it.
Yeah.
But we can certainly research the Lamico angle that we didn't hear 6 months ago, but maybe has changed.
If I can, to your point about city garage, this would be a similar situation. We can eliminate the Lamico blight. The other buildings can almost be retained. If we can get that stigma removed from our whole Marion Road parcel, that's a double win for Oshkosh. So I just would like the detail before we go charging into a location that we're stuck with for 75 years. That's probably enough discussion. Let's any other cogent points?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up. I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Good job. Sorry, Brian.
Learn something.
On to former Miles Kimball site, South Main Street and 9th. Update by Brian Burns. Introduce yourself.
Brian Burns, 905 Oregon Street, Oshkosh.
Thanks, Brian.
Update. Yes, I apologize. It has been a couple of years, likely 4. And what has transpired there over these last 4 years is the building has been gutted throughout. There's nothing left inside as far as any metal. All the holes in the floors have been filled, and a new roof has been installed so that the building has been safe, as well as some masonry work. When we were doing the roof and had a chance to really assess the building, we did notice the building was out of square, out of plumb, just a lot of older buildings that, they just go in and out like this. So the architect's original plan of cladding the building with a channel, metal channel, wasn't feasible. So about 2 years ago, we said we got to rethink this. So I guess I didn't do anything for a while. I guess I was trying to, I knew it was going to cost a lot of money, and I've been trying to save money. But I did hire, I've got 3 engineers working right now. They're supposed to be done in April. Triumph Engineering in Appleton is a facade engineer. They specialize in just facades, and they are designing a structure that will go around 3 sides of that building, a light gauge metal framing structure. And she said she would be done in April. I also have an engineer doing the people that were going to cut the holes for the new windows didn't like the architect's lintel specifications, so we're having what they call beam lintels engineered by Larson Engineering out of Appleton, and that's what the concrete saw people and masonry people would prefer to use. So that's going to be done in April. In the meantime, I have been bidding out Wenger Construction, who's doing the siding work at the Dumpke project next to the rivers. That is the same material that is proposed for this structure, so if you do curious to what we're looking at, if you drive by that, that isn't real brick, that is fiber cement. It looks very good. And that contractor, Wenger Construction, has given me a bid to do this structure as well. It's very expensive. And I'm re-looking at everything, but I'm kind of all in at this point in time. So I did have a chance. I happened to be driving and heard your last meeting, and I know you have some concerns. The building, it's a very small project. It's only 16 units, 17 units, so it is not a major project. It's not difficult from an apartment development standpoint. The only thing that was difficult was modifying this exterior. I think we have a handle on how to do it. I think we have I've got people now that can do it. Now it's just a matter of, like, it's expensive. How much money am I going to lose by doing this? And I will be losing money by doing it. I always knew I would lose money by doing it, but I'm tying it in with the existing project that has been very successful, and I'm very happy with that. So I guess you want to know hard dates. So in April, I'm expecting all these engineering plans to be drawn, or to be given to me, which the architect will then encompass into his submittal to the state. By then, I'll have a good idea of costs, and knowing, if it's like insane, well then I guess some of your other thoughts tear it down. And I mean, that's, I guess, in talking with Wenger Construction, which does this same thing like at the Dumpke project, he said, well, it's just the cost per square foot, it's good. He said, I was surprised that it was so low. And if you figure their cost is $350,000 just for the material, the exterior, not the light gauge framing and the foundation wall that would have to be created to go around the building. So it's going to be $500,000 just to clad 3 sides of that building. Granted, after that's done, the rest of it's pretty easy and relatively easy. But they made it seem like this is no different than if a new structure were to be built there, these same costs would exist. So it really doesn't really pay to tear it down if the building is located well and has usable value. So my intent is to still go forward, and so I would ask that you just keep the patience, and in April, when those plans are in and my costs are finalized, then we will go submit for a state approval of the plans, which are done. They're just waiting for these engineering details to be submitted, and then my plan would be to have the holes cut in the building for the windows, the superstructure placed around the building during the warm months of this year, and then have it all enclosed and tight to start doing interior work during the cold months.
I think the desire is really just to sort of see where you were, Brian.
Yes.
We've heard pieces that,
Yeah.
it's going to be square, it's not going to work. Will this ever get done? So I think communication has been,
Yes, and I,
so we do appreciate you coming today.
yes, and I apologize. I
If you
know,
run into more issues, just you can communicate some of
Yes.
them directly. That would be helpful.
part of it was I was trying to save some, save up money. This is an
I
expensive.
understand,
and
it's a business.
Yes, and I did refinance everything that I had with low interest rates, and so there has been, I do have the money. I mean, which was, so that issue isn't there anymore, which was, it's very difficult to finance projects like this that they're not cookie cutter.
Brian, I'm just not very knowledgeable. I guess I don't quite understand about the exterior structure, why that is needed and, what it is. I mean, I
Sure.
drive past the building and it
Looks terrible.
well, it doesn't look great, but it looks like an exterior of a building.
Well, the front of it does on Main Street. That's planning to be, that's the best side, and that's the side that we're going to clean. That's why you see the lift sitting.
Why, I mean, what has to happen on the side?
Well, the other sides are, that building was built after other buildings that already existed. So when the building was built up, none of the brick was tooled, when they scored the masonry and joints and whatnot. So it never was designed to have an exterior finish. It was built after other buildings were already around it. So you can see where the new part that was above the existing buildings looks okay, I guess. But basically, the bottom third of that building had structures all the way around it when it was built. So it's just very hodgepodge, just kind of thrown together. So something has to cover that. And basically, there only were two choices, or three choices. I guess you could build a whole new block structure around it. Third structure was EFS, which the planning department and I myself don't really think much of EFS. Which is what you see most shopping centers done with the styrofoam, and then they put plaster on it. And the third one, to me, was just kind of a new material, fiber cement cladding, which is still a masonry structure, and it looks very. And when we went through initially years ago when you approved this previously, that's what we brought in and showed you samples of, and I think we talked about. The Newman Center at the university, that's using this fiber cement siding, and now this new apartment project by Dumkeys is using it too. And I'm still.
So it's an aesthetic question.
Yes.
Not a structural or.
Not structural at all.
Waterproof issue.
Well, it will help. That building has had taken a beating. It's a 100-year-old building, and it's but structurally, I mean, that's part of the window deal. Those at the bottom level, those walls are 24 inches thick. So it's not the kind of thing. I mean, you talked about tearing down buildings. Yeah, you wouldn't want to pay to tear down this one if you wouldn't have to. There's a lot of material in there, and I look at it as I've always said that everyone talks about doing things that are green and whatnot. Well, the number one thing you can do to be green is use what you have. And if a building has any value at all, I think it behooves a person to use it. And that building, being built before engineers were around of any talent, I guess, everything is massive. I mean, the beams are like little trees, and they're just, each beam is I guess 12 inches wide by whatever structure. So there's no floor deflection. Everything is solid, and the brick is. It is what it is. It's not attractive, but it's structurally sound. So I think we're kind of getting the best of all worlds by going around it, covering it, but still maintaining a solid structure. And the other thing that was unique, a lot of people don't like old buildings because there's so many columns in them. They're just, the inside space is kind of difficult to use because of those columns are everywhere. They're every, 14, 15 feet. But in an apartment project, those columns, and in this particular building, every column is in a wall because the bay of an apartment room is 15 feet. That's what your typical typical room would be. So there's really no reason why this building couldn't be used and shouldn't be used, especially where it was located for parking and whatnot. So I'm still, I don't have any, hearing your discussions why we should tear it down. It seemed to be, there's really no reason to tear it down. It's just that it is more, what is going on here with this exterior facade is more difficult, and especially when it's only for 16 units. It's a lot.
This information is very helpful to us, because, I don't think we ever wanted to tear it down. We just...
And I should have been going faster on it, obviously, but I didn't, we'd work on it a little bit and kind of shelve it a little bit, but everything is every piece of, you've seen trailers there, the metal's all been stripped out of it, and one of the stairwells that was rotten everything basically, all the demo was done. It's just that the major things left are the windows and the exterior. And I do have, first I had trouble finding people that did fiber cement, and I was happy to see Wenger doing that, and I said, hey, would you do this? And most siding people, they do residential stuff. Siding isn't kind of a commercial type thing. And these guys said, yeah, we do a lot of things, especially this tall. And I've been watching them. They're doing a good job. So I'm excited about them and their willingness to do this. And this is dated March 18th. So they are happy to do this, and they're able to do it this summer. So, and I have people lined up to do the cutting in the windows, and I just need to get going.
Great, thanks, Brian. Appreciate the update.
Okay, yeah,
Thanks for coming and sitting through
I will
our
keep you
meeting.
informed and hopefully have some news for your next meeting. So,
Great.
okay, yeah, thank you.
Discussion on the 600 block Jefferson request for proposals.
Yes, the RDA is at a point where they can issue an RFP, but I thought it might be worth the discussion with the Plan Commission, because I want to make sure that whatever the RDA approves or asks for, that there won't be any problems getting through the Plan Commission and Council for future approvals. And I think based on the experience that we had with the bank, just make sure everybody's on the same page when it comes to the RFP. And when I bounced that off the planning staff, they thought the Plan Commission would welcome something like that. It would cost us a month in the process here, but there were a lot of things that I specified regarding density, some kind of orientation for the garages and front doors, what design standards are we going to expect for something like that. And I think it would behoove the RDA to get a little input on that before we actually send it out to developers for asking the questions that we'd like. So I just wanted to bounce that off you and see if that made sense to you guys, or we could just send out our RFP that we could kind of model off the Marion Road RFPs. And I think I gave you some examples of some of the other alternatives that we've seen around the city for kind of the infill type projects, and some of them I think would fit better than others, and that's why I'm asking the question. So wanted to leave it up to you guys, since it's kind of a policy decision on this point, and it's actually a little different in the process, and that I'd just soon get Plan Commission input sooner rather than later.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Any other?
And that'll give you give you some of the pictures that we've developed, and I think if we set up this workshop in April, we'll try to coordinate with everybody's schedule with the Plan Commission. And I know the Plan Commission would really welcome the opportunity to give you their input before they actually have a specific project to consider in front of them. That's it.
Is this on a water main?
This what?
It's a joke.
On a water main?
It's a joke.
Let me think about it. Better be water underneath Jefferson.
Resolution
Yes.
15-02 approved continuing our community gardens project on 600 block Jefferson Street.
Yes, this,
I need a motion.
Say how.
I would need a motion for discussion, you're right.
So moved.
Second?
Motion second.
Just wanted to highlight their end-of-the-year report, which kind of outlines all the great things that they did with the community garden. Also is the site for the Jefferson RFP, and based on what I'm expecting so far this year, if we send this RFP out in end of April, beginning of May, I would be very surprised if the community garden couldn't stay this year, because typically there's going to be some design, some review, some financing before they actually break ground, and I think you could get the growing season in. So I just wanted to give maybe the community garden one more year while we're going through this process, but I think this would be the last year for the community garden. And I just wanted to make sure you guys were in support of that as well.
They understand that it's probably going to happen, and that
I did make it known to them that there is that discussion at today's meeting, so.
who's heading that up now?
Amy
Klemp?
Klemp, yes.
Okay, because that's changed. 'Cause
Yes,
whatchamacallit?
Amber's-
Amber's gone. She's in
Yep.
Milwaukee or something.
right,
like that.
yes.
And we have been looking for alternative sites, and we haven't selected anything. We haven't found anything that suits everybody's needs right now, but we'll continue working on that over the next year, because I think it has been well received by the operators, the growers, as well as the neighborhood. So it's kind of a nice thing to continue, and maybe we could find another spot where we could grow something like that. It's actually a pretty good temporary use for
Right.
something like this, I think, as it's turned out. I think they've met all the requirements that we kind of put on the property at the beginning, and it's turned out just the way I think the RDA would have hoped.
Well, I think,
We should give them 8th and 9th in Oregon, or Main Street.
We've talked about that.
Have you really?
They want
Yes.
Central City.
Yes.
Oh, they do. And that's not central enough?
No, that's South Side.
Oh, dear.
Wrong side of the
Come
river.
on,
Out of order. I have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lori and Amber did a pretty good job over time.
Yes.
Yes.
Amy will do the same thing. I
Yes.
don't know, but we were
She,
pleased. that-
Amy was working with Amber in the past, so.
Okay, so that's all good, because I think they have done a good job, but there's always potential for these volunteer projects to,
Yes.
particularly when the growing season comes fast, to
Yeah.
fall apart. That has happened in a couple of places, so if we're happy with that, I was happy with the way it's managed in the past.
Because actually Amy took over when Amber left mid-season last year.
Okay.
It was okay.
That's fine.
We're going to vote now. Call the roll, please.
Hintz.
Aye.
Lasky.
Absolutely. Aye.
Was that a yes or no?
I love it. I
Absolutely
love
no, or absolutely
What does
yes?
that
Just absolutely.
They both started with A.
Tower.
All right.
Felter.
Yes.
Good, what a contrarian today, right?
Yes. Rough crowd today.
Yeah.
Executive Director's report.
Just a quick summary of what I indicated on the written report. Boatworks, I'm glad to report we're making progress, and the council did award that parking lot there at the end of Michigan that's going to be built as part of the Boatworks project last night. So fresh news there. Morgan District, we're working closely with the developers on the Morgan District. The latest possibility is a potential grant application to help them with the first building that they're looking at creating. I also wanted to point out that stewardship funds have been used on our Riverwalk and was planned to be used on Morgan District this year and next year. And if that fund gets eliminated, I think there'd be a cascading effect on our projects in Oshkosh. So I tell anybody who will listen that please ask the legislature to keep the stewardship funds intact. In Pioneer Drive, we are working on the different funding and development options with Mr. Dumke, and I think we're working very closely with the City Attorney's Office on Mr. Kierlieber's code enforcement issues, so hopefully we're going to have some good results on those types of negotiations within the next month or two, depending on how things turn out with both parties.
Alan, can you say anything more about that? I mean, I felt that we were being teased in the newspaper account, so what was going on?
Way to go.
Yeah. Not blaming the newspaper. A Boyer will tag, we'll blame him.
Well-
Yeah. But I mean, you know, Art would sort of say, you know, I'm talking to him, but I'm not, you know, I'm not really, you know, what's up?
I think he's talking to them, and he's been asking the city a number of questions, and we've asked the same questions of some of the potential grant funding sources that we'd be looking at for Riverwalk improvements or any other types of improvements on the property. But there's certainly no completed deal between the two parties, so I don't want to be viewed as favoring one or the other or interfering with any kind of negotiations, so that's why I have no data or documentation to give you on any of that, other than we've had several meetings to talk about ideas at this point in time, but nothing is definite.
I think it's pretty much true from what I understand, is that it's, right now it's going through a feasibility and due diligence now. I think Art would like to take a serious look at it. He's particularly interested in the marina. The marina, he's very interested in. He's a boater. I mean, he's tied into it, but always, I think he's trying to also recognize that his love for this and his passion for it is one thing, but he's got to figure out whether the economics
At the very least,
can work with the passion. But he is, I mean,
yeah, at the very least, it sounds like we're going to get some short-term benefits out of that.
Right.
I think that's the least we can say.
and there's
Which is
interest
great.
in showing interest, and I think, you know, things work out. But right now, there is nothing definitive. I mean, I don't know that it's a tease. I wouldn't view it a tease. I think it's just
Well, maybe I
due diligence.
I used the wrong
and
word.
I think shows to publicize it, because there's going to be enough stuff going on out
Yeah.
there that people are going to ask lots of questions, so.
Have we given him a copy of the Business Success Center
Yes.
pro forma? Okay, so he's gone
Yes.
through that, good. Because that had lots of possibilities in it.
Because most of the things are constrained. If he goes ahead with, moves them the way he wants to go, or
Right.
consistent with that report, it eliminates some of those negative ones that you're talking about tax base, you're talking about.
Right.
What happened to the river shanty conversation? Did that end someplace, or
At the end of Michigan Street?
on the with the fishing shacks out there that are unpermitted and
Yes, at the end of Michigan.
Okay.
At this point in time, the last I remember, and it's been a while, City Council directed staff to stand down at this point in time.
Okay.
And
The idea was, yeah.
I think
That was
Attorney
right.
Curtis has it.
actually, Jason, we're waiting till they rot.
But they rebuild them.
Oh,
I was just
you're
curious
right,
if it was.
Forgot about it.
Yeah.
Any other topics for discussion?
Just quickly for Marion
sorry.
Road, everything seems to be proceeding with Anthem, the project that's under construction. Mr. Dumke's working on his financing and plans for the other two sites. We're working on it through the remediation concerns with DNR and the developer for the Bank First National. And last night, Morgan Crossing received a lot split for the property to the north of the water tower.
Right.
And however, that doesn't change the plan development, and any change to the development plan would still have to come through RDA and Plan Commission and Council. So nothing is proposed other than the lot split. And that's all I had on the list, unless there's anything else that.
Just a question on
Any
funding.
of those.
State funding seems to be cut back. How is that gonna impact the Riverwalk?
Well, as part of Governor Walker's budget, he's proposing Senate Bill 21 that would eliminate acquisition money for stewardship, under the stewardship program, for acquisition of parkland development areas for the next 13 years. So if that does go into effect, the money that we apply for Riverwalk improvements through the stewardship program will potentially be impacted, because they will look at acquisition projects first before they look at improvement projects.
And the money we're in line to receive in this calendar year, do we still get that money?
Everything that
Or
we
we've gotten
have
off?
Been awarded.
signed
Okay.
grants agreements with is okay, but it's this next funding
The
cycle that...
applications we're making here in May for 2016 construction, there might be no money or less money.
As of
available.
July 1, there might be nothing, right?
Correct.
So
Right.
which chunks would that be?
The rest of our Riverwalk, Jeld1,
Well, Charles went.
You're all out
Pioneer.
Pioneer
outside.
Drive, Pioneer, island
Everything on the south
itself.
side beyond over
Yeah,
there.
everything that has to be done on the south side yet.
It's just 13 years.
Oh, it's dead. I mean, it has to, there won't be a stewardship.
No, no, no.
Which means we'd be working on the Riverwalk a lot slower than we have over the last few years.
13 will stretch into more years.
Lots more.
I got two things before we adjourn.
Please.
I want to bring up one. This is my last meeting.
Oh, it's
So
on
I do
mine.
want to thank you folks.
Thank you.
I've been here for the last 4 years and done that, so I do appreciate what you've done, time you put in, the thought you put in. So that's much appreciated, both staff and volunteer folks. The other thing is that on the 21st of April, we will exchange the gavel. That means your next meeting is scheduled for the 22nd. Is that correct, or? you right?
Well,
The
April
third week
April isn't a normal month for us, so we'll have to schedule a special meeting.
Okay, so when it is, I probably won't be here now. One thing, when I came on, I just sort of came in and got involved. I did the background reading on the RDA, which I did at a later date. One thing that's true is that the mayor is the chair of the RDA. I don't know if people are aware of that or not. The mayor or a designee, so there has to be a formal designation. So whether it's Caroline or whether it's Steve, they will have the opportunity to serve themselves as chair or appoint somebody as chair. So we really didn't go through a process like that when I came in, because I wasn't aware that was even part of the process. But I've since learned about halfway through when I went back to all the original documentations for all of our committees, because we went through a committee review and everything, and I said, oh, I didn't know that. So that will happen, so I will let either Steve or Caroline know, because they'll be elected early, so I'll go over some things with them early, so at that point in time, then that's what will happen. So again, thanks for your service. Been fun. I've enjoyed
Thank you,
it.
Burke. Thank you very
It'll
much.
be bittersweet. It'll be bittersweet.
We'll miss your comment. You always have level-headed approaches to things. Well, no, you do. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. Everybody root hard tomorrow night.
Go Bucky.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Nope, we need a motion, please.
I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn. It's my last meeting in this program. I want to make the motion.
Good ending.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Thank you.